Hi. One of the most wonderful things about this whole project is to get to meet new people who have been doing things with trombone studios for years and years. I was able to take a lesson with Dr. Martin Hughes at Winthrop University at Rock Hill, South Carolina, and it was a wonderful lesson. This is just a few of the materials that he gave to me, plus over an hour of his time and his knowledge on how to run a trombone studio. I've edited the video down to just about an hour, and I hope that you enjoy it. Thank you very, very much for being willing to do this, Professor Hughes. We're here in South Carolina at Winthrop University, and how shall we begin? I should tell you that I have not even blown any notes at all.
We will begin then with the manual that I give out to students.
Oh, wow, that's great.
I give this manual to all of my students. And what I like to do is foaming. There's 2 volumes, and as you can see, it's got word archive on it. It's the one I used last year, although it's not much different from the one that's that I'm using now. Just a few minor changes, and you can have that, of course.
Thank you.
Now, in this manual, what I usually do with students to start them out is how I would like them to start their warm-ups and things like that. So on page 2 in the manual,
Yes.
daily regimen for trombone breathing exercises. Blow air into the trombone with that attachment, and I have a recommended tempo of 72 miles per hour. And let's see, that sounds right on this. Yeah. Hear that okay?
Yeah.
All right. So as you can see in the first one, maybe I'll stop this one, there's some explanation. Yeah, in the first one it's just hard blowing for 2 beats and then inhaling for 2 beats, hard blowing for 2 beats, inhaling for 2 beats. So I measure out the inhales pretty much when we're doing this. So let's go ahead and start this one. 3, 4, 1, 2. I have 2 ways of doing it. One in which the tempo is going to remain the same, and the upper one in which you have a full beat for the inhale. And I prefer doing the bottom one. Okay. You have to meter out the air. Obviously, you can't blow as hard for this one as you can for the first one, but meter out the air so that you're taking an inhale exactly 1/2 of the beat.
Underneath.
Okay. And here we go. 2, ready. Next one. No tongue, just abdominal muscles. Bigger breath of time is just inhale. Okay? And here we go. 1, oops, 2, ready. Finally, the last one, you see there are 8 beats in it. And the idea is you blow, you hold the system. Blow, hold the system.
Okay.
And only on the 8th beat do you take a breath. 2, ready. lifting up the idea of, focus on breathing a little bit, also to get some warm air into the instrument before you actually start going.
Now the idea on number 1, 2, and 3, I understand. On 4, the holding, that is...
That's controlling the diaphragm, and also it introduces an exercise that I have a couple of pages.
Oh, great.
So now, on page 3, mouthpiece buzzing, as you can see there.
Yeah.
All right. What I have on here is it opens up with just a note to tune to get used to stuff like that. This is not played quite yet. And you hear 4 beats. And then you start buzzing. So, yeah, I guess I should have just let it go with that. But, so you'll see what happens. And what happens is you see that each one, the intervals get larger. Scales, thirds, fourths, fifths, sixths, sevenths, and octaves. And Niccolo Vaccai was a 19th century, maybe you heard his name before, voice teacher.
Yeah.
And this, I decided to do the mouthpiece buzzing based on these things, but the intervals get larger. So let's go one more time. We won't go through all of them, but we'll go through a few. Don't care for free buzzing. I don't recommend it, but if somebody wants to do it, I'm
right. And that's where I am too. I used to recommend it.
Yeah, I always want them.
Yeah, and you can get, even with this, you can get some bad habits. So
that's exactly
this is really. Yeah.
So that's the way I kind of do it here. Shall we do the 1 3/3?
Okay.
All right. Fourths and fifths. Let's jump to 6. That one is the one that gets a little bit larger intervals and a little bit more activity in it. And this is number 5, 6th. Intervals of 6.
fun.
It is, isn't it? That's the buzzing warm up, and we get to the next page, and you see why I have that kind of crazy quarter S, quarter note, quarter S, all in one breath. Of course, I've got the quick and dirty approximate relationship between B flat and F positions, and most freshmen, as you know, don't really know that much.
Right.
I mean, they may have done it and maybe occasionally used it, trigger for a C or something like that.
Right. This
exercise is designed to do a couple of things. It is breath control, where you're trying to get 4 equal sounds out of that without taking breaths between things. Mm-hmm. But the other thing is also, the idea is to get used to doing the F attachment positions. So as you can see in the very first one, for S, first position. Then 6. Then valve 5. And then back 1. See how that works? And then the next one is just valve to valve 3. They can see the difference between where a valve regular 3 and valve 3 is just by ear.
Right.
It is by ear. And the same for the rest of it in there. And they're all alternate positions. See, when we get down to the C there, I even tried the valve 6, even though I know it's sharp for everything. But and I start that one with valve 1 because that's more likely to be in tune for the first note of that than the 6th position.
Okay.
Then they have a little rest, and then we go up. So it warms down to B flat and then back up to B flat. If you don't mind, give this a try.
Sure.
Tell the students that even though you will never really play the A there at the top of the step in valve 4,
right,
that the object is to find out approximately where valve 4 is.
And as it went by, that's why I got lost. I thought to myself, I've never done that in my entire life. Cool.
And then I've got a silly one here, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, with the repeated notes in different positions. And again, it's a tuning situation. No, yeah.
That's cool.
And try to get to the sound in tune. I like that. Here we go. We'll do it with the accompaniment. 4 beats. Back to the first one up there, the attacks and releases. When I got my master's degree, which was in theory, I still treated it as though it was a master's degree in trombone performance as well, and took the lessons from Ernest Lyon.
Oh,
very fine.
Yes.
He was a Remington.
He was a Remington student at Louisville.
Right. He was at Louisville.
Yeah.
I got my degree at the University of Louisville. And even though Remington liked to walk down and all that stuff, he had the attacks and releases, but he didn't use the alternate positions. I added that afterwards. So his opening was just like that, except all primary positions. And I took that idea from him and added the alternate. That is where it came from. And I did work with him, and I think that I've taken lessons with a few professional performers over the years, as most of us have. But as far as someone who really settled me into pedagogy, I think it was Ernest Lyon that did that. He talked a great deal about it. Now, from here, as we go through, I alternate legato tongue and regular tongue on these. You can see on number 10, the descending scale. The first one I have as legato tongue, all the way, ta-da-da-da, and I use that with the idea. I know I'm at odds with this, with a lot of teachers, but in performance of classical music or this type of music, I discourage the use of natural slurs. For example, you can do this one, as you know, with legato tongue, without the repeat. And you can come back from 4 to 1 without the tongue and use a natural slur. But I recommend against that. I recommend using natural slurs. So the articulation for the person. And for the second one. So rather than doing legato for time all the way through a warm-up, I alternate it with legato and regular tonguing. And then I've got some that I do use the pure legato, like number 11. Well, the first one is tongue, right? And the second one, that one I don't have them use the tongue at all. That's a different kind of exercise. And I guess I'm doing. Let me also explain about some of these exercises, especially the lip slur exercises. I used to have this one go. Right. Like that. Yeah. And after I read an interview with Joe Alessi and saying that in the early part of the warm-ups you should do these lip slurs on a relatively slow manner to do them like this. So I slowed all of the lip slurs in here down. And then I have the fancier ones, have the students do those later in the day or later in the practice. So let's do can we do the beginning of number 10?
Sure.
We won't go through the whole thing, but we'll get the idea of the legato tongue and then the normal tongue. And business with the glissando, I don't have them do that every time. I have them doing this, and when they use the glissando, I don't have them repeat the note. The idea is to, as they're getting into the lower register, to glissando to the lower register rather than playing it to its own. The glissando,
Right.
And same with all of them.
It also keeps the air moving too.
It does, indeed. So, and now the little thing, we'll just do a few of these. The next one's with the number 11. That's it.
Yeah.
You get the idea on that.
The fact that it's a compound meter, I don't know why, but when I first started the Remington exercises, the 16th notes were very difficult. I could do the triplet or sextuplets faster, and nobody could tell me why.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you thought about that when you did that in 6/8 as opposed to a.
Well, as I said originally, it was da da dee do dee do dee do dee da do.
Right.
And what I wanted to do is first slow down the movement
Right.
on that, and not to focus so much on the upper interval.
Right.
The intervals get equal treatment,
Okay.
so to speak. I just came up with that as a more comfortable and relaxed kind of way to do it.
It does feel easier for some reason in my mind.
I didn't talk about it earlier, but I never have cared for the long tones that go like that. So what I've told the students is, and they usually don't do this with the accompaniment.
Okay, they
So
do.
usually they do it without the accompaniment, although they have the option. But to use these things as long tones, the nice thing is they're in context of the key. So they go with the first one. And just to hold out as long as they can. And of course, as they go higher, they can hold the note longer. As they go lower, they can't hold it quite as long.
Right.
Do a couple of these?
Sure.
All right, let's try it. Warmed up to that F now, as you can see.
I have not played those Lions things in so many
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
But the fact that they didn't, I never switched articulation. That was the hardest thing for me, was to switch articulations every
Yeah.
time.
I get so many students coming in here fresh who do everything legato tongue.
Yeah.
Everything legato tongue. And so that's one reason. This all used to be legato tongue as well. But that's one of the reasons why I switched it to alternate between tonguing and non. And also you've had an interval thing like this as part of it. But again, without the thing, and even taking a breath in there, if necessary, I like to use this as a long note.
tone part is when you get to any of the sustained pitches, trade
Right.
it like you would your long tone exercise.
Right. Even back up to number 12, I'll sometimes say to students, do want to do it this way. And there's a little section of explanation in the front of the book that explains some of the different ideas that you use up there. And so you see the legato tongue LT back on the first page. Single tongue or triple tongue you see on number 11, and on number 10, single or double tongue. So, but when I have them double tongue, I turn them into 16th notes. I'm on page 6.
Okay.
Up in track 10.
Yeah.
And the tongue goes. But sometimes I recommend to them to do the double tongue through there. So we continue listening. We get to number.
We're looking at 13.
13. Let's do a couple of these. We've already warmed up to the F. Again, it alternates tongue and slurred. The idea with that one. And you've probably seen this many times when and then slur. Yeah. And again, it was influenced by Alessi's interview, talking about doing this kind of stuff at a slower tempo.
Yeah.
Go down to 4:15, and we'll just do a couple of lines of this.
Sure.
Just to get going. And again, it has to do. Mostly they do it without the accompaniment. And here I often do it with the accompaniment. They have access to the So, these 2 pages have just been working on getting the range to that's as low as this and as high as this. Is that up to the F. Now we turn to page 9 and we start going lower. Now, with freshmen, I insist that they do at least the first one down with the vowel 3, and that they try the next one if they can. Some already can get it, some of them can't. So here I make work with the student and make the decision as how far they should be going on this regimen. By the way, if you do all of the regimen from the very beginning to the very end, I think it's 21 minutes.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, so it's not that big a deal. For freshmen, it's going to be less because at this point I start cutting things out. Or just having doing partials instead of doing the entire thing.
So you want your first years to be able to go down to E flat trigger, and make sure that they're trying to expand it to the D flat.
Right. Yeah, and another thing you'll notice with the slurs, I do everything in half steps. So it slurs down half step, half step. When I have the tonguing things, the legato and the regular tonguing things, sometimes it goes down a half step, sometimes it goes down a whole step. It just gets too long and complicated if everything went down a half step. And hold on, let me mention one more thing. Another Ernest Lyon thing that he had me do, and I tried it and I liked it. You'll notice the third one down is in B major, and the last note is the B natural. Mr. Lyon used to recommend that I play that as a false note, a fake note,
right,
in third position with the vowel. Have you heard that before?
Yeah, I've heard of using false notes, and I've been trying it, and to me it's really hard. But
yeah, it is.
I tried it for about 2 weeks on a book that I was going through, and it really helps to in other notes. It helps the other notes.
Again, these have The glissando's on them, but you can't do the glissando for the last two, so you have to do something like a natural slur. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out. That was Lion's. Let's just do a couple of these, going down into the low register. Descending slurs. It's the same type of process. Let's just do a couple of these. As far as that slur. So what I have to do with this is everything is in with the valve. So that whole first one, instead of going back and forth like that, just all valved out. And so all of the rest of these with all valved out as well. So, I mean, you learn alternate positions that you could possibly use if you wanted to. Let's start it again. Do the first one to E down to E flat and try the next one or two before going on. Next one, this is where we start ascending. F3 to B flat 4, so going up a step at a time here. I've got three freshmen, one's a bass trombone player, it's whatever, but two freshmen, and right now they're able to go up to the G. And so I asked him, okay, go up to the G every day and then try to go to the A. And then in a few weeks or something, or a month or something like down the road, I'll check to see how it's going, and then I'll increase it. Okay, we'll do number 17, going up to the high B flat. This reinforces it again, like before. I mean, you probably don't. I've changed it so that on the highest note, you release, and then you release it, and then have to reattack the note. And that, I think, is a good exercise of itself. And I just like to ask them to be able to reattack the notes as they do this sort of thing. Yeah, it has an accompaniment. Let's listen to the beginning of the accompaniment without playing it. That's it. That's the tempo. later in life, later in the semester or the following semester, going to 19. This one does go up in half steps because it's getting so high. And so it just goes up to the high B flat that you just did. And this particular one goes up from that B flat to the high E flat there and that thing. And you see, it's just the same format as we've had before on that, except going up to the high E flat. So that's the goal. I know Beethoven's Fifth is a whole step above that, but if they can get to the E flat here, I'm happy with that. Then a little flexibility study here, number 20. I think you get the out of 19. Number 20, let me just play the opening to that. Okay, and the idea with this one is that, what is the idea of this? Oh, is you're slurring everything unless it's a repeated note. So, slur, ah, and then ta, with the slur stuff, but also you'll notice it alternated again with the tongue. Maybe we can try one or two of these? Sure. Okay, here we go. And then finally, to end this, I may ask the students, I do ask the students, even if they're maybe skipping page 11 entirely because it's too high and not completing this stuff on this, I ask them to skip over to page 12 and do these descending things just to work on the low register. This one I do slur everything, I don't do any of the tiny stuff. So let me show you the first one. And so on like that. So I keep doing the glissando down to the next one. And this one goes by half steps. Perhaps we could do a couple of them without the machine. Okay. Ready? Go. It is. As a matter of fact, I do recommend my students to do this the very last thing, at the very end of their last practice. This is the second volume of this thing, and we probably won't look at it together, but you can go ahead and do it. And this is a primer on multiple tonguing here. And so I've got the movement of the tongue. If the quarter note is at 112 and you're double tonguing, and you want the articulation to go the exact same speed. If it's a compound meter, you set it at 74, and it will work like this. And again,
so to go from double to double to triple.
Right. And like I say, I think of this as a beginner thing, so I have recommendations for pursuing it farther. But I get them started in this book. The first, I have a whole page of doing nothing but ka sounds, ka, 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 and then ka 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 ka. The World War I song, Katie, which I thought was it. But anyway, so begin with tempo quarter 112, and you'll see quarter notes down here, but then 6/8. So now, if they want the 16th note to go, it's 74. says, go through the first as a single tongue and repeat with double tongue. So what I do is, it may not be 112. I find the tempo that works with it, but where they can go through the first time ta 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 ta, and then take the repeat, and the second time go ta 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 ta, and gradually increase the tempo, going as fast as you can with single tongue, then switch to double tongue only. So they get the tempo faster and faster, using this as a guide, going faster and faster.
Okay.
And let's see, there's explanation here. What in essence, excuse me, as I say in here, is that the reason I have them do it this way is because I don't want them to ever have to say it's too fast to single tongue and it's too slow to double tongue. So they make sure that they have a nice overlap in the two. Triple tonguing in here, some interval studies, large interval studies, and they go up by half steps. It's the same thing over and over again. Little exercise for learning Pryor's bluebells. Trill studies, way I work on this little business, doing it first with measured things and different types of things, and showing them positions that they can use for whole step trills, and so on. Studies for F attachment. Attacks and releases, this is identical to the first one you had, but I have them going through, and again, this is just to work on tuning in the various positions as they go along. Then I get some exercises that go down by half step as they're going down, working on the F attachment here. Goes down to that F, and then I've got a little tune there that goes down to the F. Here it goes down to the A, and the same two transpose. So they keep getting more by half steps on this thing. So on. I put the Bloom studies lower so that you can use the valve on working on those. And this is just to give you some ideas of what's going on. And then just various etudes using this sort of stuff as well. But that's the supplement to it. Now, everybody, the very first lesson gets a pre-ring binder, trombone study manual for newbies, for the beginners, the front and the back, and this is their starter kit. Every student would fill out a questionnaire like that, and I have contracts for every student, and that's what I have them do, fill out for their weekly practice thing. But this is the contract, and I've made this up for Jane Newby, who I expect, well, no, she really won't be a student in the fall. I'm not settled on that yet. And I show them, I divide the semester into 3 periods. And I give them the first third. Now, I think a lot of trombone teachers would think that I just go too slow when I do this stuff. This is the way it is. Her first lesson will be, I just thought it would be on a Wednesday. So I'd say August 27th is going to be the first lesson. And that's when she goes through all this stuff that I'm going through with you now. She will also get a contract, this. And I'm telling her for this first thing, and she has until September the 24th to finish all of it. She will do Bordogni's 1, 2, and 3, Bono 1, 2, and 3, some preliminary clef studies, and then purchase Blazevich School for Trombone clefs. And she is supposed to have that by September 24th. I've signed her a solo Marcello Sonata, the first movement, and then I've got key studies, which we're coming up to in the other book in the second. And I am asking her to do C major, A minor, F major, D minor. All trombone students coming here know their major scales because they've learned them in high school. That's one thing that's pretty routine, so they all know their major scales. None of them know their minor scales. We get to that in a way, but since they already know their major scales, I go rather slowly through the various keys. I do this. So these 2 key sync. Then I do something called a tune by ear, and that's in the studio manual also. And I have them do it in these keys. So that's something that they're supposed to. Initially, they're playing. Most of them are playing from memory. They're memorizing in those keys. But eventually, they get to where they understand the patterns pretty well and are able to do that. So the first lesson is this kind of lesson where I'm
Right.
introducing things. I tell the student, now, when you come back for the next lesson, I want you to have done some of this and some of this for me to hear, and look through the stuff and see things that you might want to help. With students who take responsibility, I let them choose the order that they want to do things, when they want to do this, and they've got 3 evaluation periods to do it. If I find a student who's doing one thing here and one thing here, and then all the rest there, I start assigning what I want to be done every week.
Now, is it cumulative in that the final evaluation you do everything in the contract, or is it piece?
No, it's piece.
Okay.
If they, let's say they do Bordoni 1 and 2 and Bono 1 here,
Right.
they don't have to do it again.
Right. Okay.
They just have to get through everything. And so the last one will just be hopefully just a few things, but for some of it, it's all but 2 things. And I try to
very
use it.
specific for them, and they see what's down the road.
Right. So like I said, they all get a 3-week binder. Like, here's the numbering systems of octave designations. This is the one of the Acoustical Society of America, and it's used in being a theory teacher, I know this, in all theory books. That is the system used. So I've adopted it for my trombone studio as well. And then there's the alternate Helmholtz system, which is used by the ITA. I think you
when they review things.
Yeah, and I think this is much more direct, much more
What's
precise.
the difference between that and that? The different font.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
when you look at it really quick, I think the other one's much clearer.
Exactly. But here's another type of position chart where it goes up by half step, and here are the octaves that are indicated. That starts C1 and up to B1, and then C2 up to B2, and so on like that. This is my course of study for 4 years, where I expect them to do, what I expect them to own. First year, recommended the things that we'll be working at, and some recommended reading, and the solos to choose from, but they're not limited to those solos.
Right.
So they, we have this is pretty easy going as far as that's concerned. Second year, third year, and often for the 4th year for education majors, it's just 1 semester anyway.
Right.
And all of that kind of stuff.
Okay. Do you have, at the end of the semester, does every student play a jury?
Yep.
An adjudicated jury?
Yep, sure are, and we're working on that now.
And how does that fit into their grade? Is it part of the
Oh,
grade?
well, each teacher has the ability. I've got 3 grading periods here in the jury. I count it all as 1/4 of the grade.
Okay, so it's 25%.
Yeah, 25% for everything. Now, I have done my own Bordonis. So I don't use the Roche. Little introduction to it. So the first thing that would be assigned in here, and it's on here, your Bordonis 1, 2, and 3. And these are commentaries about things that are for each one of them. And these are the keys that they're in, if you're looking to work on a specific key. But I have pretty much consolidated a lot of A2 books together, so that I know the keys of the do that. So looking for these keys in there. And then I'm signing 1, 2, and 3 for the first grading period. That one's not in Roche.
I was going to say.
Pretty easy.
That's not number 1.
No, that's not number 1. It's number 1 in Roche is not Bordoni. And one thing I like about mine is in the page turns. And yeah, no page turns.
That's great
for everything. In the keys, exactly. Now I have a publishing company, so I have done the Bordonis through here for my own things. I don't ask them to buy anything that I publish. So what I do is it's in the computer, and as they need the etudes, I just add to them. So we've got number 5 there, and I'll add 6 and 7 and
So
1.
these are exactly the same as that.
Yeah, this and this are the same. But this is not like any, there's several Bordoni things out now.
Right.
And I've done a few different things with these than Bordoni did. But one thing, Brochu changes some of the keys drastically. And so I've, especially in the early parts, he's got a B major thing that Bordoni originally wrote in B flat major, and so I keep the B flat major and then save the B major for a little bit later. Now this is something I kind of ran across. Do you know these Bona things?
No.
All right, Bona. I love them. And as I say, I published these as well, and these are selling well, pretty good. So, Bona, and the, you know, Bordoni's legato and smooth and stuff like that. Bona can get very, very technical on these things. And you see as it gets towards the end, these things can get pretty wild and woolly. That's a cool one right there. But it begins fairly easily. They have to have the clef studies, the Blazevich. They get the Blazevich. I have commentaries about how to do this. It tells what clefs are in 45, and you see I don't assign everyone 35, 37. I don't do 37 and so on. I skip around. And speeds, things like that. So they got the commentary here, and they'll help. They get this manual, and it will grow over the years. So now, the well-tempered trombone key study. Let's just start with the C major. That is in this. Well, a lot of my students can't go up to the high C when they first get here, but these top lines need to be memorized. C major scale, you see 2 octaves. But if they can't do it 2 octaves like that up to the high C, I have the alternate scale for them to memorize. It amounts to 2 octaves, except it doesn't go to the extreme. Let's play the alternate scale together, if you don't mind, 2. Arpeggio from memory, which you see there, and again I've got an alternate note if they want to, if they can't get up to the high C, and that has to be memorized as well. And hopefully down the road, I'll get them to do in the future. Maybe the sophomore year I can get them to do the complete C major scale like it's originally in the complete arpeggio up there. And when I get them to introduce it, I often have them sight read it. The exercise.
And the etude is the same each time.
The etudes are the same each time, except sometimes I have to change it a little bit because of range and stuff like that. But it's basically the same every time. And as you get towards the back, you come to the last of these etudes, page 48. I should probably renumber these things. Okay. Then on 49, you see trombone studio manual tunes by ear.
I see,
And over there on the right side, I've used the numbers of the scale degrees. Now, what I tell them, you know the melody, and you don't have to use this thing, don't use it. If you can just play it by ear, play it by ear. But if you can't, then you can use the numbers, and then on the next page you can see, Are You Sleeping is done
with just numbers.
Another aspect that I'm doing that I don't do in the first lesson is sight reading page. So I take them through the sight reading page and sort of keep track of how far I've gone with the sight reading. Part of our jury is sight reading. Conconi.
Oh, and there's the piano part too.
Yeah, because I don't like this go back stuff, and they stop and keep going back.
Right.
It forces them to keep going. So we have number 1. And of course, I usually have my Cacconi up here. There it is. All right, number 1, and the key is C major. What I've shown you all of today is tenor trombone thing. And I did my own Berdonis and own bonas and stuff like that because I like the pieces. But also, it helped me make my own trombone, bass trombone. The red signifies bass trombone. And so they're doing Berdonis, and they're down an octave, right? And the bona, down an octave through here. And Cacconi. And this is for sight reading, and you can see.
So you say one down.
Yeah, down an octave. So for a while there, I just wasn't treating the bass trombone as well as I should. Although I did play 1 season bass trombone in the Annapolis Symphony Orchestra.
A couple of questions I brought with me. The first just occurred to me when we were talking about the multiple tonguing. I am someone who has a very short, soft palate. I don't have a uvula. When you look in there,
so the ka is very difficult.
So the ka is very hard.
Yeah.
And so, do you have a reason for ka over the ga or any?
Well, ka and ga. The ka and the ga hit the palate in exactly the same place in the back. The difference between ka and ga is unvoiced and ga is voiced. So ta, ga, ka, ga, ka. As far as I'm concerned, they hit the same place. And the reason for the ka on double tonguing is if you want to double tongue. Now I'm talking about how I talk to my students. Right, this kind of stuff like this. I teach that there is a slight, when you go ta ka ta ka ta ka ta ka, there's a slight break in the sound. Ta ka ta ka. When you go da ga da ga da ga da ga, the sound continues. So I tell them that my students, it's more a mental thing between the taka taka daga daga and things like that.
It becomes a more legato, double tongue
with the ga sound. I've got a little explanation where I show what I consider the difference between the taka sound and the daga sound. Can't find it right off the top. And something else that you might notice in there when you look at triple tonguing. I think most people for triple tonguing use ta ta ka ta ta ka ta ta ka ta ta ka. And I've always used ta ka ta ta ka ta ta ka ta ta.
I think that's much easier.
I do
don't
too.
know why.
I do too. And if you're going along in a piece and it's, let's say it has eighth rest, eighth rest, and then you go into all eighths, you're going ta 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 ta. The T is staying in the same place.
Yes.
Ta 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 ta. Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense. I always thought. So in my case, I'm going through an embouchure rebuild right now. First of all, I didn't play a lot. But second of all, over time, I was so lazy and the corners were gone, and now even today, you know, it's been 2 months, so now I have to consciously think, set the corners, and as I go into the lower register, don't let them collapse and everything. If you have a student coming in who's a first-year student, they may have been accepted to the school, but you may get them in here and see something right away. What do we do at that point? Do we?
First off, I don't judge visually first.
You listen.
I listen first. Then, if there's a problem, then I'll look at it visually to see if there's anything that can be done. I call myself a non-contortionist teacher, in that I minimalize the things that I ask students to consciously do with their muscles. But in a case like that, I mean, we do the usual things about bringing the lower jaw forward and down. Some people call pointing the chin forward and down. And it's only at that point that I'll start doing that. And, you know, it's a little different from each student. That's when I sit over beside the student, stand over beside the student. And also when we play duets. I've got some duets up there that we play sometimes. But I'll just work with them and watch and see if something works. And frankly, with me, I don't find an easy one-size-fits-all.
That's right. There isn't one.
Yeah. So I just have to. It's kind of an experiment with each individual. But if the student is doing okay, I don't touch it.
Well, this has been wonderful.
Well, glad to do it.
Is there anything that you would want to have the whole trombone world imagine them all at your feet? What to tell them?
Oh no, I can't think.
Okay,
the whole world. I kind of keep it to myself.